Okay, very good. Hello, everyone. It's Aley from Heart and Soul Connected, and welcome to our show. This is pre-recorded, and I want to welcome Andre, Astrology by Andre. I did not realize we were in the same neck of the woods. That's pretty cool. So welcome, Andre.
Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, yeah, there was a couple of things that I wanted to ask Andre about what's coming up for all of us, about Neptune and a little bit about Pluto. But I was taking a class today, or an intro to astrology, just to learn a few of the basics. And the lovely lady who was teaching the class, she didn't want to really bring the bad news to us, but she told us that there were 9 Geminis right now that are sort of running a lot of countries. I don't even know if you're aware of, or have you thought about any of that? You have, okay.
Well, I mean, I can think of, okay, so I know Boris Johnson is a Gemini.
Yeah, and Putin is.
Putin, No, Putin is Libra.
Is he?
Yeah, Putin is Libra.
Okay.
He doesn't count for that.
Okay.
Trump was running it. He's a Gemini.
Correct. Yeah.
To be honest, I don't know who the others are, but it's entirely possible that it's true. I know I'd have to.
Yeah, there's another one, Xi Jinping, the Chinese one. That they said that he was also a Gemini, and I remember thinking to myself, I know there's been some good ones, and my husband's one, so I'm not picking on Geminis in particular, but John F. Kennedy was Gemini, and my dad was a Gemini. So, I had a really good relationship, and he was a great guy. But I think it's because it's the twins. You can go either way, maybe. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I was just checking to see because I can't remember. I put his chart somewhere, but for some reason I'm having a hard time accessing Xi Jinping.
That's okay.
Xi Gemini? Xi Jinping.
Let's see.
Yeah, June 15th. He is. So he's right in there in the same degrees as Trump too. Very close, because Trump is June 14th and he's June 15th. And the thing when you start getting into putting people in one sign
in a box,
it can sometimes, especially if, for example, you get a period where, I mean, clearly during the Trump years, Xi Jinping was more ascendant, started to get embroiled in the same problems as Trump, and you can explain it through, for instance, the Saturn transit, things like that. But I usually say to people, don't make too much of saying this sign is now all of a sudden evil and this sign is better.
Right. Oh, no, and I don't want to do that either.
I mean, yes, there's duality, but if you think, okay, so Gemini, dual nature, that kind of thing, they can change their mind and all that stuff. Yeah. That's true, but then it's a very cerebral, can be a very intelligent sign. Not Trump.
Absolutely, it can be. So, yeah. And it depends on all the other planets as well, which I realize. You're not just one sign. So, but when she mentioned it, it really blew my mind, because I just never put that together at all. And I thought Putin was. I'm a Libra, and so the fact that Putin is, she said she was embarrassed to be a Gemini because of some of these people were running the world. And so if Putin's in my camp, then I'm not real thrilled about that either. But anyway.
Well, yeah, that's the thing though. I mean, Libra energy it's the pure relationship energy. So you would think that would mean something, but it doesn't. So the idea is that it can get deployed in almost any direction, depending on the rest of the chart.
Sure.
Like Margaret Thatcher was Libra. She was pretty tough because she had a Mars thing in her chart. Justin Trudeau's dad, Pierre Trudeau, was a Libra as well.
Was he? Okay.
He was on the edgy side as well. So.
Then you have Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, exactly.
Different Libra. Yeah.
Humanitarian. So this is the thing where you can really, with astrology, if you start saying, oh, it's Libra, Capricorn, it'll depend. It'll depend entirely. You can get.
Sure.
I always tell people with astrology, planet signs, they're not fixed. They're it's like a frequency range. Like imagine it's a radio, and you have the high end and the low end. And so the high end of all the signs is wonderful. The low end is horrible. right? There's no such thing as a good Pisces, or like everybody in Pisces is good. That's good and bad, right?
I understand. Yeah. So I remember in the 70s, the first thing I was drawn to was astrology, although I'm not a mathematician. And at that time, you really had to be to do the charts. And so I always read, and certainly on my sun sign. But then as time went on, I've had readings and I have learned so much more, not enough to be an astrologer, but so much more about the different components of all the planets and the houses they're in and so on and so forth. But what interested you? What brought you to want to do astrology?
It happened concurrent, or rather right after, but in the same period of time when I started meditating. So I would sit still for periods every day, and among other things, in that expanded state that I was feeling, I kept getting the sense that I should look into the planetary patterns, and it still took me a number of months. But then I finally, as you said, there were no computers, so I went to the occult shop, bought the books. It's really high school math. It's not that complicated. I figured it out. I figured out enough that I drew charts, and right away I really took to it, because within not too long after I started drawing the charts, I could look at the ephemeris, which is the book with all the planet cycles.
Right.
And then I looked back in my life to long before I had connected with astrology. And I checked a couple of dates and I thought, this is really weird, because there was such a correlation. I knew, okay, this planet means that, the other planet means the other thing. So then I realized, well, there's something here, because how could this be? I couldn't pretend. Right. So then I started looking, and just through the love of it, the idea that there are these orbits and they intersect, and it's basic high school geometry. It's not that complicated, but like anything, you got to work at it for quite a while. Sure. And it can't really be work. If it's work like homework, then you're not going to get very far. You have to like it. I used to stare at the ephemeris for hours, and it was fun, because I'd be kind of pondering what was happening then, and to me that was interesting. But if a person is looking at planetary orbits and things, this is boring, then it's not going to work.
It's not going to work for them. Yeah. Exactly. No, I remember having one of my first, and it was the person that had to draw the chart all out. Now, of course, it's so easy. You just plug in some stuff and it comes right up. But she was reading some of my past, and that's what really, really made me feel so connected to it, because she mentioned periods of time. There was a period of time, like in the late 1950s, where my father was away from the family. He was in a tuberculosis hospital. And she said the father left the family. And where did he go? And then he came back. And I'm like, yeah. And, then she went a little bit more ahead about a marriage of mine that kind of, didn't do so well. And, that it was a karmic debt that was paid in 1984 or something. And I'm like, wow, it was just too spot on to be random. Very much so. And, before we only read, like what Linda Goodman's sun signs in the paper or something, but it has really grown into being such a fascinating topic, and so important, an important thing for us to at least consider. I know there's a lot of people that still think it's not, but it really, really is fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if, I don't know what to say to people who would say, oh, this is, I don't know what to say, because I sometimes I have said, if you knew how wired you are to the planet, you'd actually get a little scared, because you'd realize, there's, it's pretty obvious if you follow it. Mm-hmm. It's not only the big cycles, even the lunar movement, as triggering the parts of the chart. It's pretty obvious through your energy changes what it's doing, and so it becomes a fabulous tool for self-study, because if you know your angles, you'll get to see a certain thing. For example, 4 times a month, it'll go through a trouble spot, and that's your vulnerable place, and you self-react. And over the years, you learn, okay, that's my best result, and that's the worst result, and why is that happening? And then you start to see the intersection of the fated pattern with how you're managing your will, because your will is very important. If you manage yourself better, then what happens is the chart moves up a notch, and so then you manifest a better level of planet. So typically, as you get wiser, the cycles don't bother you as much. When they're harder, you're able to put them to work.
You rise above it.
When there's less wisdom, you make more mistakes, create more problems for yourself. That's where it's not entirely fated. It's partly fated in that there are cycles that are real, but then there is, what are you doing with those cycles? And that part is
I understand. But you need to know what they are in order to make those conscious decisions. So that's fabulous.
Right.
So yes, I'm a Libra, but I have a Capricorn rising sign, and I find it fascinating because a lot of people that are around me also have a Capricorn rising sign. And I know that that's supposed to be where I want to be, I guess. Is that right? The rising sign is where, or is the way you show yourself to others?
Yeah, it's more like the rising sign is the jacket you wear, your facade. But it's not just I mean, it can be at times, it can be like an actual, say, phony facade, but really the rising sign, because it's where the Earth, when it was the Earth spins at about 1,000 miles an hour toward the east. That's why the sun rises in the east. It doesn't rise; the Earth falls, and the sun
rising.
Right. So then, when the Earth intersects that eastern point, that's the ascendant. So it's your most grounded point. It's the way you live your moments. Your moments are your ascending sign. So then, in fact, some astrologers think, Stephen Arroyo, he thought, and I think I would agree, he thought that a lot of times the ascending sign finds it easier to do that sign than the sun sign, because the sun sign is like something you are striving to be, and it takes work. Even though it's your core self, it's hard to access. Whereas the ascendant is like an immediate, I just do this, right? So Capricorn rising, then, in a way, you're more Capricorn than a Capricorn in a certain way, right? Maybe over time, the Capricorn gains enough self-knowledge that it. So, for example, like you'll see something like Pisces sun might be more likely to display the escapist tendencies of Pisces than a Pisces ascendant, for example, right?
Okay.
The problem is, the problem with astrology is, as soon as you say something should also say in brackets, unless it's not true, meaning it always depends. You have to look at every single chart, calibrate what's happening, because otherwise, you're thinking in boxes will lead you into
understood. Yeah. You're not bringing in the whole picture. You're not being shown the whole picture.
And then, by the way, if you're Capricorn rising, you go look at where was Saturn at birth. It sounds like yours was in Libra, maybe, or maybe Scorpio, Libra or Scorpio, right?
Yeah. Let's see where it is. You said my ascent.
What year were you born?
55.
Okay, so yours would be Scorpio, I believe.
Scorpio.
Right?
Yep.
Is that right? Right.
Yes.
So then if the Capricorn rises, then Saturn in Scorpio is the ruler of that. That's right. So then you've got the Libra is in the 10th up above,
right?
Scorpio 11th. So then that links you to your groups and your friends and all that Saturnian thing in the 11th, which is good and bad, because from time to time you'll get a Saturn transit and this friend, like,
no, I know.
Not enough of this friend, because Saturn will do that to you. It'll kind of go, this person, and Saturn doesn't teach through niceties. It teaches through
hardship,
suffering, problems. Yeah, exactly.
Understood. So, yeah.
And then the 10th is quite career oriented, or it needs to have impact on the world. It wants to bring forth some kind of influence because it's elevated up there in the 10th sector. I use the whole sign system because for the last, 30 years, I started out with other systems, but I would read charts and it made the most sense. So in a way, it makes it easier to study, because as soon as you know the ascendant, you just count one sign at a time, second house, third house. You don't worry about those, boxes that are created. They don't work anyway. So then if someone tells you, I'm this or that rising sign, you can mentally
mentally swing around to it. Okay. Yeah. So yes, and if that wasn't hard enough, I have a Pisces moon, which I've always been very sensitive, but also empathic. So, I mean, once I found that out, I knew for sure that I was probably, this is so true. This is really who I've been. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's in your third sign. So then Pisces moon becomes a strong planet in your communication style because the third is communication. So, and that's, again, good or bad, because it's good in that you can speak this language. It's bad if someone says, oh, this woman sounds spacey. What is she talking about?
I know. Yes, you feel very attacked if somebody just says something that's negative. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. It's so fascinating. I think, though, a lot of us now are hearing a lot more about the outer planets because a lot of them have been changing. And I know that like the, what is it? Neptune is generational. Saturn is generational. Isn't that right? I mean, it stays a number of years in that sign when you're born.
The generational, you usually start at Uranus because Saturn is the last one we see. So that's why, and this is another amazing coincidence, but there are no coincidence type thing, right? So Saturn is what our eyes can see. You can't really see Uranus. Some people claim they can, but it takes a lot of effort. You need a telescope or something.
Sure.
So then Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, that's when you go generational. Saturn as the limit, and it's curious that in the body it rules the skin, and it's not made up. You will get skin rashes and skin issues under Saturn. So the fact that something rules the perimeter and ends up being that way, this is the magic of astrology, that the associations are so precise. But when you get into Uranus, you have a 7 years per sign, 84-year cycle. It's a much broader thing. Neptune 165 years, Pluto 250 years. That's generational because you're born, like say, in your case, your Pluto's in Leo. You're in a generation. Those are the artists and the people that are doing the Leo thing under Pluto. Then you get Virgo, which is the computer people and the people that are now basically subsidizing all the health stores because they're so into health with Virgo. But that goes like for maybe 12 or 13 years, or sometimes 15. The amount of time Pluto will stay in there, and that's how you get those generational patterns. But it's also why I always tell people, do use the ancient rulers. Don't get fooled by the fact that they're new rulers, because otherwise then you'll say, well, now Pisces is only Neptune, and that means that you're only ruled by the generational planet. But really, Jupiter, which is with previous ruler, is still the more personal ruler of the sign. Now, I don't know if I'm getting a little bit too technical here, but
no, it's, to me, the first thing I thought of was, if you wanted to know what the next paradigm will be, then you need to look at that, and you might be able to, I don't know, not prophesize because that's ridiculous, but you can map out what the next generations.
Yes.
So how long, what are we in right now with that generation? What are we still in Virgo, or?
Well, okay, so Pluto is about to switch to Aquarius. So that's one big switch. Neptune will switch to Aries. That's another big switch.
Okay.
Uranus will be a few years before it goes into Gemini. But if you just look at Neptune and Pluto, that's big. That's a big, for a lot of reasons, because the Neptune and Pisces, if you look at that cycle, started in 2011, and you could sense the beginning of this on the downside, the beginning of disinformation. It's almost current with the Tea Party and that kind of crazy thinking where I remember that I thought, are these people crazy, the stuff they're saying? And then it got worse and worse and worse. And curiously, right in the middle, because if you think about a planet, it's moving along, and when it's in the middle of the sign, it's most entrenched and in there. That was when the Trump election happened, right in the center. And so you get this, and then and you could see that it wasn't just Trump. There was Bolsonaro. There was the Hungarian guy, Orban. This thing changing, and the whole idea of fake news and all of that. That is Neptune on the downside. On the high side or upside, which is really good, that was also the amazing progression of YouTube publishing all these incredible teachings. I used to study things in the 80s that were hard to get. They're all on video now. You can listen.
You can get anything on YouTube. Yeah. You really can. Yeah.
And for modern teachers that are presenting the spirituality in amazing ways linked to science. I mean, we're in an era where that part of Neptune is fabulous, but then there's the other part, right? The other part is the insanity of disinformation. People are constantly
because there's always a balance.
Right. So that would tell you, though, for example, that one of the cycles, the Neptune changing to Aries, in some measure, that should start to cut off this fake news, like the idea that untruth is the same as truth. That's the Neptune.
Right.
Anything goes, something goes, it seems, who cares? But it is important, because it really corrupts.
Is there anything in any of that also is the rise of propaganda or the rise of
that's what it is.
Yeah, it's in there. Okay.
The rise of when you think propaganda, think Neptune in the sense that Neptune, it's the way. First of all, Neptune rules by what it rules. You can understand it. It rules any kind of projected image, recording, video, film. I mean, this is just all over our world now.
It is.
Tablets. I mean, when you look staring at a tablet, that's a Neptune device.
That's a Neptune. Yeah.
So then, as a result, if you put it in a place where it's open to both ends, then of course you got to look at where Pluto is and all the rest. But definitely,
sure, of course, yeah,
you can see the 2011 period and all of that, and reflected in Neptune, and the fact that propaganda is basically propaganda is falsehood, right?
Right. Yes, we're seeing that over and over, and we have forever from Putin. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So propaganda is Neptune. For example, here's a great way to understand the Neptune cycle. So Neptune, as well as being propaganda on the falsehood side, it's a planet that, as the collective energy that it is, because it's one of the collective energies, it tends to become like a celebrity status type planet. I mean, think about it. If it rules film, it rules film actors, right?
Yeah.
So then when Neptune is favorable to you, it's likely to make you popular. When Neptune is unfavorable, it will make you unpopular. So Hitler in the 1930s had a very favorable Neptune because it was in Virgo, and he has his moon in Taurus. It was trining. He was a Taurus, so he's got the Earth and trine. Everything was just moving along. Everybody loved him during the 1930s.
Right.
Then when Neptune switched into the next sign, into Libra, he started to downtrend. I mean, it was almost concurrent, and he didn't last. He lasted another 3-4 years. Then he put a bullet in his head. So, so that's a great example. Trump is another. Trump came in on a Neptune trine, but now he's, he moved toward the squares, and it completely unraveled. And now he's having to deal with the squares. And that's why
So you don't see him rising again with Neptune in 2024 then necessarily? No, not from the charts anyway.
Not unnecessarily or in any way, shape, or form.
Good, thank you. That's good news. Wow. Yeah. Where would you see COVID coming in? Were you able to see that was coming?
Yeah, COVID, first of all, I'll admit that, I mean, pandemics, they're so infrequent. I was looking at it in 2020, and part of it too is that you're looking at the situation was so restrictive and so potentially horrific. I was grappling for ways, like, when is this going to end? And I remember posting a few videos where, if I now look at them, I think, grown, you shouldn't even have said that because you didn't have enough information. And I would say things like, maybe it'll get better next month. I mean, no way.
We all want to know the good stuff, though. That's probably why you did it. Yeah,
exactly right. So, and not having the experience, but then credit to this man who put together a video called "The Astrology of Pandemics." It's on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
And I remember I ran on my channel the promo because I was so impressed. He did all the research, and he showed that the Jupiter-Pluto-Saturn conjunction in Capricorn was the astrologically responsible factor. And he showed it going back all the way to Justinian times, when these three planets do something, either in a square, conjunction, opposition, the pandemic. So he said at the time that Jupiter in Pisces, like what would happen is Saturn, Jupiter would go into Aquarius. Then that would mean Pluto would be left in Capricorn. Then Jupiter would move into Pisces. When the planets all split in the three signs, then the end of the pandemic.
Then it would be the end of the pandemic.
Right. So the first one was in May of 2021, which, if you recall, was when we had the vaccines.
We had a bit of a break. Yeah.
Yeah. And effectively, for people that were vaccinated, the pandemic did end then in large measure.
Pretty much.
It's just that the masks didn't end, right? And then the second time that Jupiter entered there was the very end of the year, last year, which is when Omicron came in. And people thought Omicron was bad. And I knew immediately when I saw the initial reports from South Africa, they were saying this thing is really contagious, but really mild compared to Delta. So it's going to take over the infection, and this will really dampen the death rate, especially if you're vaccinated. So COVID in that sense is over if you're vaccinated, but if you aren't, well, then it's dangerous, because it's still a dangerous disease. And there's where you get into, you get into political discussions where you think,
oh, I know.
Yeah. Like think about COVID. When you think that they show you these curves. Now, of course, part of the problem is the Neptune disinformation is so pervasive. There are all these right-wingers and Trump voters who will not believe. They'll show you a curve and they'll say, look, the people that are vaccinated, the curve is very low. It's not there. The people that are dying are the other people. They don't believe.
Right.
But then they die, like in large numbers. And then I think, okay, where's the logic in Tucker Carlson telling these people not to get vaccinated, since these people are your voters? You're killing your own voters.
You're killing it's what I thought. Yeah.
It's just mind-boggling.
It makes no sense.
Why?
I know.
That's the world we live in. Because, you got to think to yourself, the people that are most rabid that are saying, I'm not going to get vaccinated ever. You think, oh, that guy's going to vote Republican every time, right?
So
you want to keep them there.
Yeah. I know it does. It never made sense. So the second, do we, any ideas what the third, is there a third? Because there's supposedly some real stuff in Europe going around now, like a Deltacron or something like that.
I would, my feeling is not, we'll see. My feeling is that the pandemic period is not our problem now. Now our problem is the Ukraine situation, the potential for a war.
Time for something new.
Yeah. Because
if you just have had the shots, the pandemic may give you, it's like the flu. You could get the flu, you could get you could get COVID, but if you haven't had the shot, then you're taking a chance anyway, no matter what.
And this is where it's to me this thing where if you don't trust anything, then you would say, well, they're giving me the wrong thing, and things like, well, these companies, they're just out to make money and they want to give you multiple shots. And maybe I'm lucky that I have two scientists in my family.
There you go.
They explain it to me in detail and they say, no, that's not it at all. Including, I remember I had a discussion with scientists one time, and I basically said, okay, so let me just understand something. Is this true or not? I said to them, if everyone from the beginning or at some point had put on a mask, we would have killed this thing, right? And they said, yeah, because the virus can't go anywhere if you're masked. It's obvious. But in our country, people, I'm not going to wear a mask.
Well, and the problem was because things shifted at the time, and we had to learn about this virus. That Fauci and some of the others said, no, you don't need to wear it. Masking isn't going to make a difference in the very, very, very beginning. And so now they're like, well, you told us, why did you change your mind? It's like, hello, things change. Things change in medicine.
There were stories that they said they did that because at the very beginning, there was a panic about COVID, and they didn't want people to rush to the stores because they needed them for the healthcare workers, for the people on the front lines. But how Americans are, because I remember in George W. Bush era, there was something happened about duct tape, and I remember that there was a run on duct tape. They were all. It was remember the anthrax.
Yes.
Next thing you know, Costco couldn't find enough. Tape to sell because or whatever. Home Depot.
Yeah. And then it was toilet paper and wipes, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that was amazing. And then people were clogging up their toilets with shirts and underwear that they used to clean themselves up. I thought, oh my God, do I really live in this country with all these types of people? It doesn't make sense.
No, it's in this astrologically, this would be the three big important points coming together like that.
Yep.
And as it turns out, definitely harsher for the US than for some planets, because the US has a planet directly in line with those. So we were getting tremendous pressure, right? And the US became this anomaly in that here we have way more deaths than needed. You know, the way it was managed, it was like a third world country, and it shouldn't.
It was. You're right. No, it was amazing to me. You know, I teach at the college level, and I'm watching all this, and I'm saying to myself, I'm not any better, not any worse than anybody, but I believe in science, and I believe, you know, it was almost as though they said, you know, we were trying to take over their minds, and they had all this other crazy stuff going on. But that was when the Q thing came up right before that as well. So that was crazy. So yeah, you're right.
Another thing is curious about that, because when you think about why a person believes what they believe, or why you believe what you believe, or I believe what I believe, and if you really think about it, we believe what we believe about the world by the sources we trust. Because how do I know anything? I watch media, and of course, oh, that's the mainstream media. I remember arguing, which was a waste of time, but I remember in my channel, there were these people in 2020, I was saying Trump is going to lose and he will not be coming back. And there were people saying to me, no, you don't understand. Now he's going to, you know, during November, December, he's going to back. And I say, no, it's not. And the thing is, it's because they were trusting a different news source.
Correct.
They'll say that the New York Times and the Washington Post are full of lies. No, they're not. Sorry. And you know how you know? Because if things happen approximately with what your sources say will happen, then that's probably true. When not, you know, but we're in an era where people will read Breitbart, or, you know, even worse, low end, you know,
low end stuff. Yeah.
And then
actually, and Fox isn't even a real news station. It's never been a
exactly. So that's the
thing. Wow. Fascinating. It just fascinates me that you know, I would never have thought when I was, you know, in my 40s that we would be in this situation, you know, that I just felt like it wasn't, maybe it was undercover. I don't know, because these people have uprised, you know, the January 6th thing, how they're turning that on its head as well. Was there anything that you may have noticed around that particular time period that could have been a warning signal if we had been aware of it? You know, the march on the Congress and all the violence.
So you mean other than Trump?
Other than Trump, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
so, I know he's the instigator, of course.
Well, I mean, because anything that Trump is around, I mean, you can just count on criminality, you can count on malfeasance. I mean, the man is just a walking criminal. But no, so there is. Speaking of the outer planets, because they set the big tone, you know, the big trends. So then you would say the U.S. is kind of reaching. It was already near its Pluto return, because that's one of the things. You know, when you're approaching a return, people often make the mistake. They think it's only real right in the degrees. It doesn't quite work like that. It's sort of the area where it is.
Right.
So it was already getting close. Then you have the fact that the Neptune transit is very tough on the U.S. right now, because the U.S. is in the same Neptune cycle as during the Civil War. So right now we're experiencing internal division. If you look at the Neptune cycle, Neptune starts in its Virgo location in the U.S. chart, goes around 85 years, half of like 165, at which point the Civil War happens because it's opposed. Then it goes back to its original spot in the Second World War. The country comes together to fight the Nazis. Fight.
We're
back again at that point, right? So there is internal division. So then you're seeing all this division. And then what happened in the insurrection, what brought it to a head, is that the Saturn-Uranus square in the sky. So Saturn-Uranus in 2021 and 2022 are traveling in a square. So Uranus is the classic rebellion, insurrection energy, right? Whenever you see Uranus, that's how you rebel. And right around that time, the way you know that it is look at the month when something happens and look at what planet is stationed. And if you look at January 2021, Uranus, and it was Saturn Uranus square. So that's the rebellion of the Uranian rebels against the structures of government, but it didn't succeed, thank God. So that would be like where you see that the American Saturn withstood the pressure, right?
Withstood the pressure,
which is good. It's good news. I mean, if that
it is, thank goodness.
Goodness.
And I'm no fan of like Adam Kinzinger or Liz Cheney, but I did notice that she has been getting all kinds of donations, and I don't think they're going to get rid of her. So I think standing up as her, you don't see it either. Okay,
I've done her chart several times, and no, she's going to be fine. In fact, Liz Cheney's moment is coming in late spring and through the summer. That chart is rocky. Last year, that chart was hurting because she was getting the Saturn square.
Right. So and she got moved out. Yeah. Okay.
But now she's getting a Jupiter conjunction to her sun. Right? So, Jupiter trine from Aries. Jupiter will be in Aries. Trining, very nice energy. Jupiter trine works for you. So she's going to be fine. Right.
I'm like I say, she's not my cup of tea as far as politics goes, but she really has impressed me, I guess, or she stuck to her guns, and I have a lot of admiration for people like that, as well as Adam Kinzinger. Actually, the two of them really being singled out and really, bastardized, I guess is the best word to say. But that's really good to know for her. That's good to know.
And I mean, I think with that, I've mentioned it quite a few times in my channel, because people get into it's the idea that perfection is the enemy of the good. They'll be, if you mention Liz Cheney, she's horrible, whatever.
Yeah.
I always say, no, that's not how it works. This is a chess game, and the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Again, I don't care about that. It's like I often say to people, this is a two-party system. Don't vote for third parties, because you're throwing away your vote, and you could. That's how Al Gore lost that election.
I know.
95,000 brilliant Democrats who thought, I'll give it to Ralph Nader. Then you get the Iraq War, and you get multiple Supreme Court judges. Don't complain. If you're
your own damn fault.
Think about the chess game you're playing, and don't let people fool you. And vote in your best interest. Right? It's really important.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, so the Neptune is in the Civil War configuration, and the Pluto is in the 1776 American Revolution.
Yeah,
two big wars, really.
And I mean, you could probably now. To be honest, I wasn't expecting Pluto to show up through Ukraine, but it's moved it up a notch, because all of a sudden the U.S., whatever it's experiencing internally, is now faced with this other problem, where we are doing the world policing, and it's quite a dangerous situation, because that Vlad the Impaler over there might lose his temper, and I don't think he will, but do something crazy, because he would destroy himself. But
something wrong with him, I think. Well, not anymore maybe than, he was crazy to begin with, but he's just I don't know. I don't think he loves anybody. I don't think he likes himself. I think he wants the Soviet Union to come back is what he wants. Yeah.
But I mean, the thing about that logic, he's right. I mean, he's right in the sense that if you say, well, why is this guy mad? It's true that there were all these republics on the, Slovenia, all those republics, the Baltic republics. And when the Soviet Union fell apart, or rather they went broke, they tried to compete with the US, and they had no money. So then those republics, including Ukraine, separated and became independent. And the reason they went toward NATO is because they're scared of him. That's why they did it. So logically, him saying, oh, well, you can't do that. The answer to that is, well, what gives you the right to enslave them? And you, in the first place, you conquered them in the first place. You went in and by force took over Poland and took over. So you have no right to those places. They want to be with someone else, but he interprets it as, oh, this is all the US manipulating it and making it.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Who else is going to do it? Who else is going to do it that isn't the US, right? So what can I say to Vladimir? He's going to have to get used to it, because
I guess so. Yeah. So my husband, who follows a lot of, he follows information on the bots. He's been following it for many, many years. And he said when we had a disconnect with Russia earlier, that the bots all of a sudden the Russian bots weren't able to get through. So like the propaganda from Russia went way, 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 way down. And we were focusing on stuff here. So, their whole propaganda scheme has also pushed into our politics, of course. We know that. But, we got to get rid of this guy, or this is just going to keep happening over and over again. We're going to have this.
Yeah. Well, and you don't know necessarily that the person replacing him, if you do get rid of him,
True.
They could be worse. But that is true. Yeah. And that you could almost say the U.S. has been at war with Russia for years, because this guy engineered, he's the one that brought in Trump in a lot of ways.
He
managed to do all the brainwashing on Facebook. Like, they literally took American inventions and turned it against, the American society.
Right.
American society was not sharp enough, together enough to understand that they were being fooled.
Right.
Because there was a pretty dramatic undervote. This is another Democratic truth that Democrats sometimes don't want to hear. Hillary lost because a lot of Democrats didn't vote. Oh, well, she's going to win. There's no point in voting.
Right.
That's not the way you do it.
I know.
Go vote.
I know. We did a better job when we were in the middle of the pandemic in voting than we did when we had the freedom to do whatever we wanted.
Well, that was because people were scared of Trump. So in that way, it's amazing how fear motivates you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So, this is all wonderful information. I so appreciate, I love this. It puts a lot of things in perspective for me. But now we're going into Aries season. I'm starting, the 21st. We're going to spring. And we have a full moon tonight, don't we, in Virgo?
Yeah, we're kind of in it. This is a bit of a...
We're in it already. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, tonight is precise at near midnight, but we're in that territory for sure, right? And,
what does that portend? Any thoughts?
Well, it portends. It depends. It's always the famous astrology mantra. It depends, because what it portends mostly is, where is it in your chart? What's it doing in your chart?
Right. True. Yeah.
So then, for some people, it's a better moon than for others. For example, it's not great for Trump, because the full moon is triggering the Neptune transit, because the Neptune is in Pisces. The full moon cuts across. So, and the other thing too is, don't always necessarily look for, well, it's on that day that he gets the news. No, it's more the flow.
It's a period of time.
Notice what he's been doing. So what he's now started to do, he realized, at first he thought, oh, Putin is such a sharp guy. Look, he invaded Ukraine, and with 12 cents worth of sanctions, he took over the country. He wasn't, anybody with a brain would have thought, hold on, this is a serious thing.
Yeah, crazy man.
What if people start dying? Then he realized, holy smoke, now we're seeing these horrible images. Now he's saying, oh, well, he's changed. I don't recognize him anymore. This is Mr. Genius, Mr. Strongman, who he was talking about before.
Right.
In other words, bottom line, to me, this is a period of more discredit to Trump. I mean, I don't know how much discredit we can bring from this guy, but it's not a great period. Let's just
not a great deal. And I remember seeing pictures of him, body language, when he was with Putin. I think it was 2018, and he was hunched over, and of course Putin's short, but it was so obvious to me that there was so much, worship, so to speak, and that's very true. So Aries energy coming in would matter where it is in your chart as well. But is there something coming up early April? Is there something coming up, or somebody said something about it? I don't know if that's true. I don't know if you are
early April. What
April 4th, like April 4th? Is there some big thing coming up that you know about?
Okay, let me see if I can.
Okay.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah. Okay, April 4th. What we have is not exactly on the 4th, but I would pin it more.
Okay.
That's pretty close. Yeah, 4th, 5th, in that range.
Mm-hmm.
So what it is that there's a Saturn and Mars are conjunct in Aquarius at 22.
Okay.
And at the same time, though not related, Jupiter's at 20, same degrees of Pisces. I would probably ignore the Jupiter there. It's more the Saturn-Mars conjunction. But a Saturn-Mars conjunction in Aquarius, again, depends on what is doing in your chart. If any person has, for example, if you have planets around 18, 19, 20, 20 between 18 and 24 Leo, that's Saturn-Mars.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So if you then try to pin it to the world condition, there's where the closest I can point to is my last video that I just posted before I came on here. I talked about how this is really going to trigger Putin's chart, and I think Putin is going to go on a really violent spree in April. So, and it's going to be dangerous for Zelensky because it links to his chart. So, and that Saturn Mars in Putin's chart is because when you think of Saturn Mars when it's being debased, it has kind of a cruel feeling because Mars is violent energy and Saturn is like organized violence almost. So I think that's not great. Let's just say that.
Right.
Given the current condition, right? Because current condition.
And Aries being the polar opposite of Libra, so that has something to do. Okay.
Yeah, Aries. I mean, the Sun in Aries. I don't know that I would necessarily tie it as much to that, but just definitely the spring period. The spring period. Yeah. It's problematic. Yeah. And then there's the fact that when you go toward the end of April, both for Ukraine and for the US, see, the end of April in reality is probably the most, if you're looking for a concentrated moment, that's the US Pluto return, because Pluto will park so near its original degrees, and it's in a station. So mid-April to mid-April to mid-May is got the flavor of that.
Okay.
But to me, it's the we're kind of in an emergency situation of sorts.
We are. Yeah, we definitely are. Wow. And I can feel the people wanting, I don't know, this is just my feeling when I see them. I can feel the Congress and other people wanting to go in there and helping. But if we do, that this will happen, so, and we'll get back into a war. So it's got to be a really tough thing for the leaders and the NATO and all of those other folks, that want to help as much as they can. But Zelensky, his chart must be, his strength is unbelievable to me when I watch him. He's he's a really unusual and very principled, courageous leader. And what I said in the video is, listen, I mean, that's true, but really, I would say April and May, if I'm being cautious, but definitely mid-April to mid-May, that is risky stuff. I know those aspects. And, there are aspects that in a regular scenario, maybe you get injured or something, but in a war zone, I know. Yeah. There's already, there's a lot of journalists even. I don't even know why they shouldn't even be there, really, honestly. I don't think, but that's for sure. Wow. Yeah. What a fascination. Well, I hope, and I do think you've explained things really well. You've explained them in the simplest terms as, and that's what I've enjoyed watching you on other channels, like with Linda and others. And because it's such a complicated thing. And but the thing that's helped me with, as far as time frames go, and like you said, it may not happen this day, it's the Mercury retrograde, because the shadow always starts here, and then later on we get a little bit of a drip still past the time. So I realize there are no hard and fast, but it's so damn close, I tell you.
I mean, they're like periods. That sort of the idea that when a planet is in a certain place, look at the range of time it occupies those degrees.
Right.
You notice that within that span of time, especially with moon triggers and things like that, that's when you get the action around that planet. And that's one of it took me the longest probably to understand, because I would look at charts and it was like I was looking too close. And when I stepped back, then I started to notice, no, there are these swaths of time.
Sure.
Is happening. And so, for example, like the one that comes to mind is the tragedy of John F. Kennedy. If you look at November 63, you don't see it. You see it because that planet had hit those degrees earlier that year. So it was actually operating from those degrees. And then you realize, oh my God, those degrees are really dangerous, right? And so it's in this period where an astrologer would have said, no, you don't go into a car with an open thing. That's not what you do.
Right.
You go with bulletproof, head to toe.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. And I bet it's the same way with when Reagan got shot and when was the Pope, remember in the Pope Mobile? I think before the Pope Mobile, I think one of the popes was shot. Weren't they?
That one I didn't do, but yeah, you always you'll always get for sure whenever there's an event where a person might lose their life or gets injured, it'll always be.
But most of the time, of course, people are looking at it in retrospect, but that's what I really like about it, because it's confirmation. Like you say, even though it may be earlier or it may come in, maybe a little later, that it was right there. It was there to see if you had the eyes to see it. So.
Yeah, no, and I mean that would be the logic behind strategy. If you're in a certain period, you adjust. And I mean, sometimes I thought, I might be wrong about this. I don't know if this is true, but I remember how Reagan, I think it was post that incident, his wife hired the astrologer.
Yes.
And for sure, like if you do your astrology and you deliberately stay out of your really difficult spots, it will make it easier, because if you do a press conference and you pick your vulnerable spot, that's when you get into trouble. And for a politician,
absolutely.
The idea is, just keep moving around and don't get caught by the really difficult moments. And they used to say Reagan was like he was like Mr. Teflon Man, and I remember thinking maybe the astrologer helps him, to protect.
Could be, because he really did. He had her, I think, there in the White House on the staff or something at the time.
Oh yeah, no, for sure, yeah.
People laughed about it, and because he was an actor, but I always thought, even as a young woman, I thought that guy's smart. He really is smart to do that. And, he wasn't one of my favorite people, but he was smart. And I bet his wife also had something to do with it. I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think it was more driven by her than him.
Her.
By her. But I remember that the woman, that the astrologer said something that made me realize she was an intuitive astrologer, because she recommended that the debate time be at a moment when there was a moon trine, which is counterintuitive. The moon trine for Jimmy Carter, and the reason I think is she intuited that with the moon trine, he might be a little too relaxed and let something slip, and that was when he made that comment about, I think, something about his daughter and nuclear power, and it just came off all wrong.
Came out funny, yeah.
And so then I thought that was a pretty big gamble, because normally the astrologer would say, no, don't do that, because that period is good for him. But looked at the whole thing and intuited that it was a good moment. Yeah.
So I remember when I was, it was 1996, I was going in to have some surgery on my stomach. And I contacted my astrologer, and I said, they want me to have these dates. And I gave her the dates, and I said, what is the best date? And I didn't want anything to be in Cancer, which rules the stomach. I remember that. And so they wanted to book me for this operation. I said, nope, sorry. My astrologer says I can't have it done till this time. And everybody thought that was so funny. And I was pointed at, everybody was, and I didn't care. I didn't care, because for me, it was worthwhile knowing I didn't need it to go wrong. Yeah.
It's correct. And that, by the way, I mean, there's a story I could tell that would take too long to tell, but around, I was about 8 years into this, a long time ago. And I had the mistaken idea that you move toward the planets instead of away. Like, in other words, what you were doing was correct. You do not, when there's Cancer or there's the moon and you're doing stomach, stay away from that.
Stay away from it.
Especially Saturn. Stay away from Saturn. And especially do not do dental work or something to do with bones, where Saturn's involved.
Sure.
And I deliberately chose to do, I picked a day. I mean, I said, I'll come to a dentist to do wisdom tooth surgery.
Uh-oh.
That was one of the roughest experiences. Later I realized that's not what you do. You do
the other way. Yeah.
It was just brutal. My face was completely frozen for 3 months.
Oh,
infection.
no.
It was just
Oh my
horrible, right?
God.
So there's where you deliberately stay out of that. And then there is a very simple thing that you can find on the web now. There are lots of sites that publish it. Is make sure you stay out of void of course moons when you're doing surgeries, things like that. Because if you do it in the middle of a void of course period, which can be hours of a day, much better chance that something goes off the rails, or you need to redo it, or or whatever. So better to
understood. Yeah, you don't want to redo it. And Mercury as well. Yeah.
Mercury retrograde if possible, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, Andre, thank you so much. This was so much fun. I learned a lot, and I hope my viewers did too. But you're fabulous, and I will be putting up your channel so everybody can go and look and sign up and see you. But many blessings to you, and many thanks for coming and being here today. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. I had a lot of fun.